Police and Fire Commission to order. I will start at the Pledge of Allegiance, but I'll also have Tim then before that starts.
The meeting of the Plover Police and Fire Commission with the Village Board for November 1st, 2017 will come to order.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The reason for the meeting today is possible discussion and possible consideration of Portage County Ambulance Service Provider Agreement with the Village of Plover for 2018. Dan and I and Chief Deaver met Monday night with the negotiation committee. We did reach an agreement with this contract. So what we want to do is bring it to both the board and the Police and Fire Commission, hopefully get that approved. It should be acted on by the county board on November 9th. We'll have a meeting tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. with the safety committee, and then we should be good to go. So.
And then from there, I'll just jump in. First of all, apologies that Chief Deaver is not here this evening. We had a conflict. The Portage County Board is having their first budget meeting, and the county board chair and the county executive both asked that we have a representative there because of the possibility that something could be discussed with respect to the service. And so in talking, Chief Deaver felt it would be best if he was at that meeting, so if they had specific questions about the service and our proposal, that he could answer those questions. So that's why he is not here, which then I guess fell to me to kind of update you with respect to the proposal. As President Davies mentioned, one of the sheets that you got handed out is actually the resolution that will be acted on by the, I'm going to look real quick because I can never remember the name of all these committees. So the Public Safety Emergency Management Committee. So the next step for them after the negotiating committee approved the contract on Monday evening is they have to pass a resolution, and then they've got to get it signed. And if that happens tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., then this goes on the November 9th county board meeting for consideration of approval. So I just wanted to show you that that resolution is in place, and it kind of illustrates again that Portage County is all set. You may know that we've been negotiating, as Tom said, with respect to the proposal for one paramedic, one EMT service at the request of Portage County. The village was requested to put together a budget for that service. The budget that was put together basically was $636,000 and $3, but we negotiated that $3 down.
Yeah, boy.
So actually, we lost $3 on the deal. I wanted to keep it, but President Davey was magnanimous in showing good coordination and cooperation with Portage County. Got those $3 out. Ultimately, what I would like to do then real quickly with you is just kind of go through the nuts and bolts of the agreement. I'm not going to go through all the details. For example, the opening paragraph with respect to the agreement is just calling to attention that the county and the village have agreed to enter into a contract for the ambulance service. The second paragraph basically talks about that there is a board technical team, and that is already in existence, but the Village of Plover will be added to it. It adds 2 positions and actually adds the possibility of a third position as well. So it's exactly consistent with the way it works for the City of Stevens Point and the Village of Amherst regarding representation. So we are pleased with that. As a matter of fact, Portage County agreed to, at first, basically what they were saying is that they had to actually have the meeting first, but after they talked about it some more, they felt that it just made sense to identify that Plover would have the 2 automatic representatives and then the capability of adding one more, whoever we may think that is. For example, the City of Stevens Point identifies a council person, so this could be a village board person, it could be a police and fire commission person, it actually could even be our kind of EMS coordinator. It's up to us to decide who that person is. The recitals, again, I really don't want to go through that too much. It's just kind of outlines the need, it outlines the state statute, it outlines, basically the intent and that we're going to be open and transparent with respect to the service. And then if you go on to page 2 with respect to the agreement, Again, just to repeat, so the level of service is emergency medical technician and 1 paramedic, 1 each for the service. To bring you up to speed, we have verbal confirmation from the state that they basically will be issuing a 1 paramedic, 1 EMT contract for the village of Plover. It will have a 2-year lifespan. What they've discussed is at the end of the 2-year period, they'd like to see it ramp up to a 2 paramedic system. So there certainly is that possibility, but they left the door open to say, let's see what happens over a 2-year period, and how things are going statewide with respect to the number of paramedics out there, et cetera, and that type of thing. So we were all comfortable that made some sense, and most importantly, Portage County was comfortable with that, because we did offer the option that if they wanted to go to 2 paramedics right away, we could have done that. We actually gave them the dollar proposal to do that, but they wanted to at least start initially with the 1 paramedic, 1 EMT, and then get that kind of comfortable up to speed, and then looking at wrapping it up at a later date. The area of service, while we all technically know that the primary service coverage that we have will be for the Plover Fire Department service area as per our contract, and that basically would be the village of Whiting, the village of Plover, the town of Plover, and a portion of the town of Buena Vista, about half of that. But what Portage County's talked about is that, number one, if we have larger incidents and we get called out, we will respond. So technically, we would respond to any incident in Portage County. But they also may enhance the area, especially in the southern part of Portage County, because of that ambulance being here and has capability, for example, to get to Almond and Bancroft quicker out of the station. And so that still will be worked out. But just wanted to let you know that's the area of service. Basically, it does point out that the final approval of the contract is subject to county board approval, and we talked about how that schedule is going to work out. Then if we move on to the license, I already informed you that we have our verbal approval. We're just waiting to get the written version of that, and that should be coming shortly. But while the village of Plover and Chief Deaver did secure that verbal approval from the state, Portage County, just to be on the comfortable side, also made the call down to the state, who they also confirmed to them that the contract is forthcoming and that things could proceed. So we are good with respect to that. Under section D, which moves on to page 3, basically it talks about Portage County is going to provide a person that fills the EMS coordinator position. They've actually filled that person already. She's already been on the job for about a week. And so we're good to go with respect to that.
And
Yes.
is that a Portage County position or a
Yeah.
Plover?
No, it's a Portage County position. That's kind of that's part of the oversight aspect of the service. You have the Portage County, oh, sorry, I got distracted back there. We have the overall person that's kind of the Portage County Emergency Management System Director.
Yeah.
That's Joel.
Right.
But there is a position under that actually is the coordinator. Their job is basically to work with the ambulance system.
All of the ambulance?
All the ambulance system,
Okay.
right.
That was my question.
Yeah. Plover, Stevens Point, and Amherst.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yep, so that person, that position was vacant,
So
it
this
has
is
now
new?
been refilled, and we're good to go. Okay? Then if we kind of move down to the administration of the service, it kind of designates the amount of meetings that we would need to attend, again, consistent with what they're already doing, so nothing new. Basically, we're joining the team of Amherst and Stevens Point, and we'll be attending those meetings. Same thing with respect to the report requirements. The report requirements are the same. There's monthly reports that have to be filed, quarterly reports that have to be filed, semi-annual reports that have to be filed, and annual reports to be filed. It's standard operating procedure over there. Mark, as fire chief, is comfortable with that. He's very well aware of them, and so that will be planned for, and that was actually taken into account when the cost was put together with respect to the budget. And then again, it also includes some porting requirements from the county to the village as well, and so that's enumerated in the agreement. We have to outline who our points of contact are, so that's included in the agreement. Let me see, then moving on to the next page. Dispatch, basically, I think we all know dispatch is provided by Portage County, and it requires us to utilize Portage County as a dispatch. Makes sense, we only want one dispatching systems. Some of you may recall or know that we used to have 2 dispatching systems in the past. It just was, not conducive to working in an emergency situation, so that's been rectified, so the county always wants to make sure it's one dispatch system, and of course, we've never had our own, so we've always worked with Portage County, so not an issue. Also, I referred to this in a way, Section F, mutual agreements. Ultimately, what we have to be willing to do is work with the other EMS providers. So again, if we get into those big incidents, if you're looking at Waushara County, Marshfield, Wausau, Wapaka County, those areas that ultimately we're going to agree that if they have a big issue, we're going to go just like they already come to us. So that had to be added into the agreement as well. Moving on to the rates, billing, and collection, that section G, I'm not going to go into detail there. It just basically, says that the safety committee kind of reviews sets the rates and reviews the fees annually and makes any adjustments, and then they would negotiate with the village. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but this is a 1-year agreement. And so it will take us through from January 1st of 2018 to December 31st of 2018. It allows the county and the village to then negotiate the next year contract, which potentially could turn into a 2-year contract. The most important provision, though, is let's say that for some reason we're not agreeing. It does require the automatic extension of the agreement for an additional year. So technically, this truly is a 2-year contract. Moving on to I, which is the reimbursement by the county to the village. So you heard the budget amount at $630,000. That is what Portage County is agreeing to pay the village of Plover for providing the one ambulance service. So what we have in section I is kind of how that would work. So the very first one is they're going to pay the contract amount of $636,000. Number 2 basically tells us that they will reimburse us on a quarterly basis. If we go on to number 3, it just talks about if there are cost overruns, how they will work, which basically means that if the village has cost overruns, we will be assuming a large portion of that cost overrun standpoint. Chief Deaver is very comfortable with respect to the budget that has been established, so we really don't think that will be an issue unless Portage County would look to kind of enhance the service. And number 4, the reimbursement is extended under emergency situation. That just calls out, again, if we have some type of emergency situation, we're just going to make sure that the service is provided, and then we'll work out the financial details at a later date. Moving on to section J, equipment and maintenance requirements. So the county is going to own and purchase the ambulance, and they will provide it. So that's something the village of Plover will not have to pay for. That's in section 1. Section 2, again, any maintenance costs associated with maintaining that ambulance, again, will be at the cost of Portage County. However, the village in number 3 will need to provide the insurance. And again, that was included in the budget. We worked, actually Chief Deaver worked with Karen and Debbie. Debbie overall with the entire budget, just so you know, who was very helpful in guiding Mark through that process, and Karen also with respect to the insurance aspect of that as well. And then section K goes on to identify specifically what the insurance requirements are.
Dan, I think you said that the village was going to be responsible for the insurance, but this is a county. Portage County shall maintain the following coverage.
Yeah, the vehicle liability, you are correct, yes.
Can I clarify
If you look at,
Clarify that.
Can I clarify that?
Sure.
It's the workers' comp that we will.
That the village, correct?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
all right.
Yes, they
Yeah,
will
thank
be
you.
covering the actual vehicle.
right, yeah, I'm sorry I didn't state that correctly, so thank you for the help on that. So then section 2 is the workers' comp aspect of the insurance that we will have to cover. And malpractice. So I already discussed the term and termination. Again, 1-year contract, technically 2 years. It's a chance for Portage County to test drive the village and see how we're operating, if they're comfortable. I think we all have every assurance that we know and will work well with Portage County and things will go well. Amherst is running a smaller service, but that has never been an issue, and this is pretty much the same thing. So that's good. You might find it interesting that Section M regarding the rapid response unit, right now Portage County funds a rapid response unit, but with the addition of an ambulance here, their committee has the ability to discuss the appropriate location of the rapid response vehicle. I'm not saying it will change. All I'm saying is that there's the potential for it to change. That one of those potential locations could be here. What this says is, A, they have the capability of doing that, but B, if they would locate in the village of Plover, then they would have to come back and negotiate and discuss with us because there's nothing in our budget with respect to any staffing for the RRU. So if they want an RRU in the village of Plover, it would have to be staffed. Portage County would have to pay for that service. We'd have to negotiate that. But again, what they're looking at is, once they change the service around, what works best from an overall Portage County standpoint. As we were in discussions, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, for example, one of the things they talked about, over 80% of the runs provided by the RRU right now are to the village of Plover or its service area. So I think that's frankly why they were thinking about that language.
Dan, what exactly is the RRU? What's its role compared to?
Yeah, the RRU unit it's not an ambulance per se, but it's a vehicle that basically, when there's a call out, and I guess the way it's kind of working now is basically if it's a call out, especially in the village of Plover or surrounding area, it's dispatched immediately. So while an ambulance would be dispatched, whether it's the one currently here 40 hours a week, or for the rest of the time, either it's from Station 1 or Station 2 in Stevens Point, immediately rolling at the same time would be that RRU. So you have one person in the RRU. In the village of Plover, you have 2 EMTs that are responding, and then you also have the ambulance. So
There's EMTs in the RRU. It's not
No.
paramedic.
there's currently a paramedic
in the RRU.
because it's funded. It's provided by the city of Stevens Point. So that is absolutely a paramedic.
Okay.
So technically, what it means that when we have calls in the village of Plover right now, 3 paramedics are headed our way. Now they can be canceled en route. And technically, I guess I should clarify this a bit. The paramedic in the RRU comes when it's considered a higher level incident, like an A level, where you have a heart attack situation, or if you have an accident with multiple vehicles, that's typically the point where it's automatically dispatched. So if you have a lesser level call, then typically it won't go. And the rest of the language with respect to the integrated document applicable law and severability, that's your typical language that your attorneys like to have you in, so I'm not going to review that because it's standard customary language. And that's kind of a quick run through with respect to the agreement. Again, just to summarize what President Davies said before, we did negotiate with the committee. Village staff, that would be Chief Deaver, President Davies, actually Assistant Chief Kenny Voss, and then Tim Krzyzewski, who's our EMS Assistant Chief, along with myself, did the negotiations. We were very, very comfortable. Just a tongue-in-cheek note, when we got back, we started with a 10-minute conversation because they did not provide us with this document ahead of time. So we went to the meeting, they talked about the contract and the document first, and then they handed to us, allowed us to recess to review the document. So we had to go through the entire document. We were able to do that in about 20 to 25 minutes, but they were wondering what took us so long, not realizing that we had to read through the entire document. So we chuckled about that a little bit, but Tom made him feel better by giving him $3 off the contract. So.
Walk your way into it.
So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you have. And by the way, once we're done with questions, if you are comfortable with the contract, what we would suggest from a staff perspective is that Police and Fire Commission go first. and basically take action, followed secondly by the village board. One last thing to call out to you. Typically what the village would prefer, because we have a police and fire commission who's technically responsible for these types of issues, the village board still would be a signatory because technically there's also financial issues. So what we would like to see is a signature line for the village president and the police and fire commission chair. Portage County prefers it to do it the way they've done it with the other contracts, which is the chief elected official. So in your approval, basically we want you to know that so that it signifies that you're okay that the chief signatory on this then will be the village president. A little bit different, but we didn't think it was a significant deal. Just wanted to make both the police and fire commission and the village board aware.
Deal breaker.
You're saying it's-
Questions?
We're not in trouble. On behalf of the Police and Fire Commission, since we've just seen this tonight, how about any further discussion from anyone on our group?
I so move.
Okay.
Second.
Any other further questions or discussion?
I see the term of the contract is January 1st. We're gonna be ready?
We are not going to be ready by January 1st. What I will tell you, though, is that I guess technically by signing the contract and getting the county approval, as soon as the county board approves it, Craig, what we will be doing is starting to advertise for the positions,
Okay.
because we got to fill the positions. So we figure it's going to be more like February or
What
March
about
where
the
we're
vehicle?
truly running. That's a good question. We haven't quizzed them on the vehicle and how quickly we can get the vehicle. We're going to have to, Chief Deaver may know that. I do not know that off the top of my head.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried for the ambulance service provider agreement with the Village of Plover for 2018.
That's the same motion and second from the board.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Are there any questions or discussion?
If I can, just for everybody's sake, I would tell you that Portage County, especially the negotiating committee, was very, very pleased. I think we were a little bit surprised when they were done with the vote and they closed the meeting. Basically, the chair of the committee, Dan Drobratz, asked us to stay right where we were. It's like, okay, what's going on? Well, he came by and shook each one of our hands and said, thank you very much. Really appreciated kind of the working relationship with the Village of Plover, and all members of the committee shook hands with our staff that was there. So we took that to heart as a very good sign, and we appreciate the working relationship with Portage County as well. Wanted to pass that along to you.
Any other questions or discussion from the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed with nay. Motion is carried. Look for a motion. Oh,
Got number 3.
Item 3, possible discussion, possible consideration of designating the village president as the signatory for the Village of Plover, Portage County Ambulance Service Provider Agreement with the Village of Plover for 2018.
So again, let's have Police and Fire Commission go for it. It's what I talked about already. If you look at the contract, we typically like to have both names on there, but Portage County would like to do it differently. If you're okay with that, if you would please approve that motion. That would be great.
3 months back.
Yeah, we want our money back.
So. Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Done.
Board?
Move for approval of the president signing the contract.
Second. Motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed with nay. Motion is carried. From the board, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
On behalf of the Police and Fire Commission, is there entertained motion for adjournment?
So moved. Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Done.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.